Daryl, let's begin with a query most individuals never pose to themselves. Why do I want to be excellent? Not how, not what, not when, but why. It's the type of question that causes people to reflect, because we're instructed to pursue achievement, but seldom are we taught to establish the significance behind it. We're provided tools, methods, 5 a.m. routines, organizers, applications, inventories. But if there's no why supporting the endeavor, it all transforms into hollow activity. Excellence isn't a prize. It's not evaluated in praise, position, or compensation. It's not a target to be attained someday when you eventually succeeded. Excellence is something much deeper. It's something internal. It's a pledge, a personal benchmark that mirrors who you are when nobody is observing. Most individuals consider excellence as something magnificent, something legendary, but excellence doesn't appear once annually. It appears every individual day. And the sole reason someone continues appearing for that kind of pursuit is because they're linked to a deeper reason, a cause, a conviction, a why. Consider the individuals who motivate you not because of their achievement, but because of their steadiness, their modesty, their silent dedication. These individuals don't waken each morning thinking, how can I surpass everyone today? They awaken thinking, how can I embody the principles I believe in? That's what daily excellence resembles. It's value-driven, not ego-driven. It's not about winning. It's about aligning your actions with something that matters. Let me share a narrative. There was a custodian who worked the night shift in a large hospital. Day after day, year after year, he scrubbed floors, tidied beds, emptied waste bins. On paper, his role was ordinary, forgettable, invisible. But if you spent even 5 minutes watching him work, you'd think he was readying the operating room for brain surgery. Every movement had care. Every detail mattered. When someone asked him, "How do you stay motivated doing the same thing every day?" he smiled and said, "I don't clean floors. I create a safe space for people to heal." That's purpose. That's a why. That's excellence. He didn't need a promotion to be excellent. He didn't need a better title. He just needed a clear connection to the purpose behind his actions. He understood that excellence isn't what you do, it's how and why you do it. So many of us are chasing the outer layers of success, thinking that if we just get that one opportunity, if we just reach that one level, then we'll commit to excellence. But that's backwards. You don't wait for excellence to find you. You bring it with you. And you can only do that if you know why you're pursuing it in the first place. Ask yourself, why do I want to be excellent? If the answer is to be better than others, that motivation won't last. The moment someone else outshines you, you'll crumble. If your reason is to impress, to prove, to earn validation, then your excellence is built on shaky ground. You'll be a slave to performance, and performance without purpose always leads to burnout. But if your reason is deeper, if you believe in serving people, in honoring your craft, in living with integrity, then you'll find a kind of strength that doesn't fade. Because now you're not working for attention, you're working for alignment. And here's the truth. When your work is aligned with your values, it becomes sacred. Even if it's small, even if no one sees it, even if it's repetitive, and you stop measuring your worth by results and start measuring it by intention. The people who master daily excellence don't do so because of the most talented. They do so because they're the most anchored. They've rooted themselves in something real, something unshakable. And that something is always purpose. You see, when you start with why, everything else falls into place. You don't need to be told to work hard. You want to work hard. You don't need to be reminded to care. You choose to care. You don't need external motivation because your reason is internal. That's the difference between chasing greatness and embodying it. Daily excellence is not glamorous. It's not flashy. It's quiet. It's often boring. It's the decision to give your best even when you don't feel like it. It's the choice to be kind when you could be careless. It's the discipline to stick to your principles even when shortcuts look tempting. And it all begins with a question. Why am I doing this? If you're feeling lost, burnt out, overwhelmed, don't look for better tactics. Look for a better reason. Return to your purpose. Reconnect with your why. Because once you do, something amazing happens. You stop trying to be excellent, you become excellent. Not because you've arrived at some final destination, but because you've chosen to live by design, not by default. And when you live by design, every moment becomes an opportunity. Every task becomes meaningful. Every day becomes a canvas on which you paint your values. That's what it means to master the art of daily excellence. It doesn't start with a perfect plan. It starts with a reason worth waking up for. When we think about the people we admire, the mentors, the leaders, the athletes, the creators, there's one thing they all have in common. It's not just how great they are in one moment, it's how consistently they show up day after day, regardless of the circumstances. It's not their intensity that impresses us most, it's their discipline. We've all been taught to believe that breakthroughs come from big moments, the grand gestures, the all-nighters, the heroic efforts. And yes, intensity has its place. It can create momentum, it can turn heads, it can spark a change. But intensity fades. It burns hot and then cools down. Consistency, on the other hand, is quiet, steady, unimpressive to watch, but unstoppable in its impact. Here's the irony. Most people are willing to sprint, but very few are willing to walk the same direction every day. And yet, that's how real growth happens. Not in a single moment of brilliance, but in 1,000 small choices stacked together over time. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't do it for 2 hours once a month and expect results. You do it for 2 minutes twice a day. It doesn't look dramatic. No one claps when you do it. But if you stop, the consequences eventually show up slowly, then all at once. It's not the intensity of the action that matters. It's the consistency of the habit. It's the same with anything worth mastering. Your health, your mindset, your craft, your leadership. Excellence isn't built in marathons. It's built in inches. Let me tell you a story. There was a teacher who used to give a writing assignment every single day to her students. Just 1 page, nothing fancy. Just show up, write something, and turn it in. One student, frustrated, asked, "What are we doing this every day? Wouldn't it be better if we just wrote 1 amazing essay a week?" And the teacher smiled and said, "I'm not trying to teach you how to write 1 great essay. I'm trying to teach you how to become a writer." That's the power of consistency. It doesn't just produce results, it transforms identity. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they lack consistency. They can show up once in a while and give everything they've got, but they haven't built the muscle to keep showing up when it gets hard or boring or repetitive. But here's the beautiful truth. Consistency isn't something you're born with. It's something you build one decision at a time. When you understand this, your whole perspective shifts. You stop looking for quick wins and start playing the long game. You stop asking how fast can I get there and start asking how long can I stay committed. And yes, that's harder. It takes patience, it takes humility, it takes trusting the process even when you don't see immediate results. But that's where the real transformation lives. In the in-between moments, the unseen repetitions, the boring practices, the days when no one is watching, but you still show up anyway. Because every time you show up, you cast a vote for the kind of person you want to become. You see, intensity is about moments, consistency is about character. There's a reason the world is full of starters and not finishers. Starting is exciting, it feels like possibility, but finishing, that takes endurance. That takes showing up on the days when your motivation is gone, when your energy is low, when your progress feels invisible. And you do it anyway, not because it feels good, but because it's who you are. That's the secret of daily excellence. You don't chase inspiration, you chase alignment. You don't need to feel motivated to take action. You need to stay committed to what you believe in. That's where the real professionals separate themselves from the amateurs. Not in talent, not in bursts of energy, but in the boring, unsexy, unseen discipline of showing up when it's easier not to. And here's the surprising part. When you embrace consistency, the pressure to be perfect disappears. You don't need every day to be amazing. You just need to not quit. You don't need to be brilliant today. You just need to be present. Because it's not about any one performance. It's about the body of work, the life you're building, the habits you're reinforcing. Progress doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for persistence. I've seen people with incredible talent burn out because they rely too heavily on intensity. And I've seen ordinary people, people no one believed in, achieve extraordinary things. Not because they were the smartest or the fastest, but because they were consistent. They decided once who they wanted to be, and then kept showing up as that person until reality caught up. The best part? You get to choose this every day. Every morning, you have a chance to move the needle just a little further. Not to impress, not to outperform, but to honor the path you've chosen. And when you do that, when you trade in the illusion of big, dramatic success for the quiet rhythm of daily excellence, something powerful happens. You begin to trust yourself. You build a foundation that can't be shaken by failure, setbacks, or discouragement. Because now, you're not relying on emotion to carry you. You're relying on identity. So, the next time you feel tempted to go all in for a few days and then crash, remember this. It's better to do 10 push-ups a day for a year than to do 100 push-ups once and never again. Because consistency is what turns action into identity. It's what transforms effort into excellence. And excellence, real, sustainable, meaningful excellence, is never the result of one big moment. It's what happens when you choose every single day to stay in the game. Most people misunderstand discipline. They see it as punishment, as sacrifice, as something rigid and cold. They associate it with control, restriction, denial, and so they resist it, they fight it, they avoid it, not realizing that discipline isn't something you impose on yourself, it's something you give to yourself. Discipline at its core is a form of love, not the soft, comfortable kind, the strong, clear, unwavering kind. It's not about forcing yourself into discomfort. It's about believing you are worthy of doing the things that align with your values, even when it's difficult. Because when you have discipline, you're not saying, I have to do this. You're saying, I matter enough to do this. That changes everything. We live in a world that glorifies hustle, but ignores the deeper conversation. Discipline isn't about grinding yourself into the ground. It's about showing up for yourself again and again because you know you're worth the effort. It's not punishment, it's protection. It's not harsh, it's empowering. The question isn't, can you stick to a schedule? It's, do you care enough about your life to live it with intention? If you think about someone you respect, someone with quiet strength, someone grounded, I guarantee you that person has discipline. Not because they're trying to impress anyone, but because they made a decision long ago to live in alignment with who they want to be. They honor that decision, not just on the good days, but on the hard ones too. Because they understand something that most people miss. Discipline is the highest expression of self-respect. When you skip the workout, when you snooze your alarm for the 6th time, when you put off the project for just one more day, it's not just a missed opportunity, it's a quiet message to yourself. This can wait, I can wait, my growth can wait. And over time, those little messages compound. They become your story. You start to believe that you're someone who doesn't follow through. And once that belief sets in, it's hard to shake. The opposite is also true. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's hard, you reinforce a different story, one of integrity, one of strength, one of trust. Discipline in that sense is not about control, it's about freedom. The freedom that comes from knowing you are dependable to yourself. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If you don't trust yourself, nothing else matters. You can be talented, passionate, even visionary, but if you can't rely on yourself to follow through, to rise when it counts, to lead when no one's watching, then everything falls apart. Self-respect is built in private, in the moments when no one is keeping score, in the moments when it would be so easy to quit and no one would even blame you. But you don't. Not because you have to, because you choose to. Because you've decided that your future is worth more than your comforts. Let me tell you a story. A young woman once told me about her struggle with waking up early. Every night, she'd set her alarm for 5 a.m., promising herself that tomorrow would be different. And every morning, she'd hit snooze again and again. She wasn't lazy. She had dreams, goals, a vision for her life, but she felt like she was constantly breaking promises to herself. And over time, she started to believe that maybe she just wasn't a morning person. But it wasn't about the morning. It was about trust. It was about self-respect. One day, she made a new kind of decision. She said, "I'm not going to hit snooze, not because I want to be productive, but because I'm tired of letting myself down." That morning, she got up. Not because it was easy, not because she was suddenly motivated, but because she respected herself enough to keep a promise. That's where real change begins. You can't outsource that. You can't fake it. You either decide to live with discipline or you don't. And when you do, something powerful starts to happen. You begin to see yourself differently. You start to believe not just in your dreams, but in your ability to live them. Not just when it's easy, always. We often say we want confidence, but what we really need is credibility with ourselves. Discipline gives you that. Not overnight, not with one heroic act, but with consistent, intentional choices that align with your deeper purpose. It's easy to be disciplined when the energy is high and the outcome is clear, but discipline reveals its real value when things get messy, when motivation disappears, when the path feels uncertain, when the applause is gone. That's when discipline becomes more than a tool. It becomes a mirror, a reflection of your commitment to yourself. You see, when you build a life rooted in discipline, you don't need to chase validation. You don't need to be rescued. You don't need someone to tell you that you're enough. You've already decided, and the world can feel that. People follow disciplined leaders not because they're perfect, but because they're consistent, because their actions reflect their values, because they do hard things, not for praise, but for principle. That kind of presence is magnetic, not loud, not showy, but powerful. It earns trust, it inspires others, and most importantly, it creates a life that's lived on purpose. So the next time you feel resistance, the urge to quit, to postpone, to take the easy road, pause and ask yourself, who do I want to be on the other side of this decision? Because discipline isn't about suffering through life. It is about choosing a standard for how you live. It's about telling yourself and the world, I'm worth the effort. Not once, not in bursts, but every single day. And that is the true art of daily excellence. There's a subtle difference between people who chase results and people who become the kind of person for whom results are inevitable. It's not just in what they do, it's in how they see themselves. It's in who they believe they are. Because actions driven by outcomes will always depend on the scoreboard. But actions driven by identity, that's where the real shift happens. Most people set goals where they say, I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to read more, or I want to stop procrastinating. And those are fine, but they're focused on what we want to achieve, not who we want to become. And that's why so many of us fall short. Because when we're only focused on the outcome, the moment progress gets hard or slow, our commitment disappears. But what if instead of chasing outcomes, we asked a different question? Who do I want to be? That question cuts deeper. It forces clarity. It moves us from performance to purpose. Because if you see yourself as someone who values health, then working out isn't just a task on your calendar. It's a reflection of your identity. If you see yourself as a writer, then writing daily isn't a chore. It's who you are. If you see yourself as a leader, then showing up with consistency, empathy, and responsibility is not an obligation. It's your nature. That's the power of identity. It turns effort into alignment. And when your habits align with your identity, they become sustainable because you're no longer forcing yourself to act. You're expressing who you are. This shift is quiet but transformative. You begin to act not for rewards, not for validation, but out of integrity. You stop negotiating with yourself. You don't need to be motivated. You just follow through, because that's what someone like you does. Let me share a story. A man once told me that he'd spent years trying to quit smoking. He'd try every few months. He'd throw out the packs, declare a new start, make a promise to his family. But after a few days, the cravings would win every time. One day, someone asked him a simple question. Do you see yourself as a smoker who's trying to quit, or as a non-smoker? He paused. That had never occurred to him. He always saw himself as a smoker, someone trying to resist his nature. And so quitting always felt like a battle, a denial of who he was. But the moment he decided to shift his identity, to see himself as a non-smoker, everything changed. He didn't just change what he did, he changed who he believed he was. From that moment on, he didn't say, I'm trying to quit. He said, I don't smoke. And with that one shift, his actions began to follow a new narrative. That's the missing piece in so much of personal growth. We change our goals, but keep our identity stuck in the past, and then we wonder why we sabotage our progress. If you see yourself as lazy, no productivity system will save you. If you see yourself as disorganized, no planner will work. If you see yourself as someone who never finishes what they start, then no amount of motivation will carry you through, because you will always act in alignment with your identity, even if it's limiting you. But here's the good news. Identity isn't fixed. It's a choice, a decision you make sometimes daily. You can wake up and decide, today I am the kind of person who follows through. Not because you've done it perfectly in the past, but because you're building it now. And identity-driven habits aren't built in a vacuum. They're shaped in the small moments, the unseen ones, the moments when it's easier not to act, and you do anyway. The decision to show up to the gym, not to get fit, but because you're someone who honors their commitments. The decision to journal, not to be productive, but because you're someone who reflects. The decision to speak up in a meeting, not to impress, but because you're someone who leads with courage. Every small life does a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. And no, you won't be perfect. That's not the point. The point is alignment, not performance. The point is to build a life where your actions match your values. That kind of life is deeply fulfilling, not because it's always exciting, but because it's real, it's integrated. Because let's be honest, the gap between who we are and who we pretend to be is where stress lives. And when we live from our true identity, when our habits reflect that, we experience something rare: peace. But peace doesn't come from avoiding discomfort. It comes from becoming someone you can rely on. And that reliability is built not in dramatic leaps, but in repeated votes for your identity. It's the decision to be someone you respect. This is why daily excellence isn't about striving harder. It's about becoming more aligned with who you already are at your best. It's not a competition, it's a return to integrity, to truth, to purpose. So, if you're struggling to stay consistent, don't ask yourself, how do I force myself to act? Ask, who am I choosing to be today? Because once you're clear on who you are, the actions take care of themselves. And suddenly, the habits that once felt heavy begin to feel natural. Not easy, but right. You're no longer chasing results, you're living from identity. That's the real power behind the art of daily excellence. We all admire the mountain climber, standing at the summit, arms stretched in triumph. But few of us want the slow, aching steps that got them there. One after another, hour after hour, often in silence, often in pain. But it's not the summit that builds the climber, it's the journey up the mountain. And that journey doesn't begin with a leap, it begins with a single deliberate step. It's easy to get overwhelmed when we look at the top of the mountain, the distance, the effort, the time it will take. And in that overwhelm, we often stall before we even begin. But the truth is, you don't have to climb the whole mountain today, you just have to take the next step. Excellence lives in that next step. I once met a man who wanted to change his life. He was tired of feeling stuck, tired of breaking promises to himself, tired of watching other people pass him by. So he made a bold plan, a 30-day boot camp of radical habits. Waking up at 4 a.m., working out twice a day, cutting out sugar, meditating, journaling, and building a business on the side. Day 1 was electric, so was day 2. But by day 6, he was exhausted. By day 9, he was done. The system collapsed under the weight of his own ambition.
We talked afterward. He said, "I guess I just don't have what it takes." But that wasn't true. What he lacked wasn't commitment, it was strategy. He tried to become someone else overnight rather than becoming more of himself slowly. Real transformation doesn't come from trying to be a superhero. It comes from learning to walk faithfully in the direction of who you already know you could be. Not in a sprint, in a rhythm. That rhythm starts with one small action, one that's so small it's almost
Unimpressive. It doesn't impress others. Sometimes it doesn't even impress you, but it's real, it's sustainable, it's yours. And over time, those small actions build something powerful, momentum. Momentum is what carries you through the days when inspiration doesn't show up. Momentum is what transforms effort into identity. But momentum can only be built on actions that are small enough to repeat and meaningful enough to matter. So the real challenge isn't starting fast, it's starting small enough to keep going. The world is filled with people who had big beginnings, but very few people are willing to stay steady when the energy fades. That's where greatness is born. Not in intensity, not in ambition, but in consistency, discipline, and trust. You have to trust that the small things matter, that reading a single page, writing a few words, choosing water over soda, saying no to one distraction, they may not look like much today, but they compound. They compound into something you can be proud of. Every tree started as a seed. Every movement began as a whisper. Every legacy was built one day at a time by someone who chose to keep going. We underestimate the power of what's small because it feels insignificant, but small is manageable. Small is repeatable. And when you string together a series of small, honest efforts, you build something more powerful than intensity. You build integrity. Because here's the secret, you don't scale your life by aiming higher. You scale your life by digging deeper, by getting rooted. Rooted in who you are, rooted in your purpose, rooted in the kind of habits that don't just get you results, they give you peace. And when you live like that, growth becomes a byproduct, not the goal. The result, you don't need to force it. You don't need to hack it. You just need to show up every day in a way that aligns with your values. And you start small, you stay steady, and life over time meets you with the scale you've earned. There's a kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're moving in the right direction, even if you're not moving fast. It's the confidence of alignment, of honesty, of presence. That confidence doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It shows up in the way you speak, the way you lead, the way you carry yourself. People feel it because it's real. The world doesn't need more intensity. It needs more people who are willing to live with intention, one small step at a time. It needs people who trust the process, who honor the craft, who don't need the spotlight to do the right thing. Because excellence isn't found in a finish line. It's found in your habits, your values, your decisions. The work is never in scaling. The work is in starting, in staying, and in allowing the results to unfold in their own time. Start small, stay steady, scale naturally. That is the art of daily excellence.